Tesla approved for $600 a share by multiple analysts yesterday is the focus of our conversation today, which is very different than our 350 price target. And why is that? This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. I want to also thank our Patreon subscribers as well as our Patreon and subscribers. If you enjoy the show, please take time to like and subscribe. We also want to note that on our Patreon facility, we do have different tiers that include a show pretty much every day of the week, along with at the top tier information about trading positions that we're holding, and even a text if you'd like updates when big news is hitting. So I wanted to review today the fact that there's been an interesting situation going on with Tesla over the last several days, starting kind of Friday, but more Monday. There's been a process going on where the stock price, anytime it got below 500, was sort of pushing back over quickly, and yesterday being the greatest example, where the stock price actually rose like 40 points in an hour on basically no news. What we found out towards the end of the day is that there are a number of analysts that actually have come out with production targets for Tesla, and the target number they've come up with is approximately 80,000 vehicles for Q1. So this is a very, very interesting number, and it's worth unpacking that number and then looking at certain aspects of how that number impacts a number of things. So basically, the analysts are targeting an $80,000 or the 80,000 vehicle number, which if you break the numbers down, that's a very low bar. What I mean by that is that China currently has produced in our mind about 20,000 vehicles, and in theory all those vehicles have sold. So if you're starting out with an 80,000 number and you deduct 20,000 vehicles-ish for China, you now have a situation where you're only asking the Fremont factory to build and sell 60,000 vehicles for them to sort of make their numbers for the quarter. According to Elon, that facility has been producing at about 10,000 vehicles a month or a week for the last, let's say, 3 or 4 months. So when you add in the overhang of vehicles that were being sold from last quarter, perhaps 5,000 to 10,000 vehicles, and you add in 10,000 vehicles a week being produced, and that's over 10 or 11 weeks. In theory, there's 100,000 vehicles that have been produced by the factory, but they're having some sales issues, so let's say 10 or 15,000 of those have not sold. So it's our belief that Tesla has actually produced about 100 grand in Fremont, and they've sold 75 to 80,000 of those vehicles. And so they have inventory sitting on the ground in the US and Europe and possibly China that hasn't been sold. But the number that was come out with by the analysts creates a very interesting situation. And what I mean by this is that all those analysts have come out and basically said that if Tesla has 80,000 vehicles for Q1, that equals approximately $530 or $550 a share. So we can extrapolate into that the fact that what they're saying to the institutions that they advise, that look, if Tesla built and sold 50,000 cars, that equates to a $400, $450 stock price. If Tesla built and sold 80,000 cars, that equates to a $550 to $600 stock price. If Tesla built, and what we think is something like 120,000 vehicles, and they sold 95,000 of them ish, that equates to a $600 to $700 stock price. So the answer right now is it's not known what the true number is of what was produced and sold, but we're going to find that out by Friday. And so as those numbers come in, one can sort of extrapolate what the expected stock price is against what the expectations were of the analysts. So right now, we've been keeping an eye on the markets for the last couple of hours at 6 a.m. on the East Coast, and Tesla is down in sympathy with the rest of the market, which is down 600 points for the Dow, and the Nasdaq is down a couple of hundred points. But basically, Tesla's not down proportionally to the regular market being down because there are so many large institutions that have begun buying at these prices. Now, this is very strange, and other than what we expected, what we actually expected is Tesla was going to come out with numbers. The numbers, maybe the production numbers were good, but the actual sales of vehicles would miss the analyst targets. Stock would take a 100-point hit-ish, and maybe more, and then we'd have to wait several days for the big analysts to come in and give those firms permission to start buying Tesla stock price again. What's actually happening is that the analysts have kind of jumped the gun, and it feels to me like the large institutions have gotten sick of sort of the usual routine of how things tend to work, and have asked the analysts to actually step up and give them some guidelines on how to assess the situation so they can move more quickly, to optimize their positions. They will still, I think, have the 3-day rule going on, but at least they now have some guidelines to work with. So we think this is really different and new, and I think it's good and sort of well thought out. The good and new is the fact that instead of having to have your position destroyed before you know what the deal is, you get a chance right now to sort of manage your finances better with the fact that you're picking up information earlier in terms of how to manage yourself. I guess the really big new thing that I'm seeing currently is the fact that in general, we're putting a ballpark number on what the analysts are looking for so that we have a way to better assess how they're going to advise their clients. And because they are the largest holders, I think that, it's a great situation because I think it makes the stock more stable and it allows the large institutions to participate in the rally. So in essence, the way the week was supposed to go has totally been blown up by what these analysts just did, and I think it helps the average investor a great deal. The next thing we wanted to cover is that we find it very strange how these numbers are playing out. If China does 20,000 vehicles and you're expecting a total of 80, you're now at a situation where only 60,000 vehicles are required to come out of the Fremont factory for Tesla to make their numbers. Is that possible? Well, again, if Tesla is producing at 10,000 a week, and they've gone through 10 or 11 weeks, that's 110,000 vehicles. So we think that Tesla could produce 60,000 vehicles on one shift, and they're actually running 2 12-hour shifts, to our understanding, on a daily basis. So this is why instead of us targeting the stock price where it's at in the early 500s, we're saying it's a $600 price target that they've kind of set up. And the reason is if you're setting a bar at 80,000 vehicles, and Tesla's going to easily defeat that, I think it shows that they're really thinking that number is higher than that, but they're setting a bar to guide how we might invest. So, we've sort of covered it already, but in general, what we're targeting is that Tesla is at about 100,000 vehicles produced, maybe 105 if you add in the vehicles left over from last quarter. And so the sales on that, we think, are something in that 80 to 90,000 vehicles sold zone rather than just produced. And so that puts us in an interesting position where I think there's the potential for some nice upside for the stock, depending on what those numbers are that come out of both Fremont and China sales and produced. So in general, we think this is really good news, and we're really shifting our price target on Tesla in the short term because of this, because at the end of the day, when 60%, i.e. the large institutions, decide to make a change in how they're doing things in the form of getting these analyst reports and buying Tesla's stock price prior to the numbers coming out. I just think it's a game changer in terms of what's been done, and I think it puts those institutions in a better position because they don't miss out on huge gains that might be possible with Tesla. So kudos to them, and it now explains why it was that for those of us buying a few puts, we weren't able to get those puts to go in the money below 500. And so we'll see if that happens in the next couple of days. But this also brings up the next problem, which is as of Thursday afternoon, which is tomorrow, we start to move into our pin position, meaning that all of a sudden we're setting up for a Friday where if there's a huge number of puts out there, that's another reason why the stock price gets pushed up, whether the numbers are good or not. So I believe that the next couple of days for Tesla trading is going to be quite out of control, unpredictable, and lucrative for those who can anticipatorily figure out what's going to happen. And we look forward to covering it and updating you on what's going on. So in general, as we've shared, Tesla is coming with numbers. Those numbers we think are easily exceeded by the reality, but the analysts have now kind of laid out the blueprint for how to evaluate what the stock price is going to do. And I think it's great that they're doing it beforehand because I think it lets the stock be more stable as people are able to buy in anticipation rather than having to wait before they understand how those analyst reports are going to hit the stock. So we'll also see how this affects the 3-day rule because you kind of have a pre-3-day rule that's going on now, and then we'll actually get the real 3-day rule after the number of produced comes out. At any rate, I wanted to thank you for taking time out to join us. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Just a reminder, don't forget at least 25 leg lifts a day on each leg to strengthen the quad muscles. Also want to encourage you to consider a 5-2 or some other diet in that frame. Also wanted to encourage you to consider 30 SPF or better if you're going to be outdoors, and perhaps some weightlifting a couple of times a week to help maintain bone density. I also wish you best of luck in all that's going on with the COVID virus issues at this point, and for you and your family. At any rate, we look forward to our next conversation. We're actually doing a second show today focused on the Model Y, and look forward to hopefully you joining us on that as well. Have a great day. Bye for now. Tschüss, German, au revoir, French, lehit road, Hebrew, Choda Hafez, Farsi, hey do, Swedish, in Jamaica, and Zdravstvuyte, Russian, ni hao ma, Chinese, and in Jamaica we say enough respect, walk Woodman. Thanks once again for joining us. Your presence is appreciated. We look forward to your comments post-show.